Hi, I'm going to go over reviewing a grant opportunity in a notice of funding opportunity, also known as a NOFO, which is how the federal government puts out funding opportunities via grants.gov, which is their clearinghouse for NOFOs. And this is what one looks like when you click on it in grants.gov, or if you visit it from a website from an agency, you'll see the funding opportunity ID. This is an EPA grant called Air Quality Information, Making Sense of Air Pollution Data to Inform Decisions in Underserved Communities Overburdened by Air Pollution Exposures. It's Environmental Protection Agency award. And if you check out the synopsis, this is the normal format in grants.gov for NOFO. The first tab will be an overview of the opportunity. As you can see under funding instrument type, this is a cooperative agreement grant. I just want to flag that. You'll see both competitive awards, contracts, and cooperative agreements in grants.gov. A cooperative agreement is different than a grant award in that it usually indicates pretty substantial role for the agency to play within the activities and execution of the grant. And in this case, it would be they will be helping support monitoring, research, and evaluation for this award. So that's why it's a cooperative agreement instead of a straight grant. You'll see the CFDA number, which is the research program that this grant falls under. There is no cost sharing or matching requirement, which is great. You do see that they're expecting to award 8 grants and that they have an estimated total funding of $10 million with an award ceiling of 1.25 million. You'll also see in the synopsis when it was posted, April 8th. If it was updated, has not been updated since it was posted. And then original and current closing date. Sometimes they do push back closing dates. So you might see that revised over time. Currently, the closing date for this cooperative agreement proposal is June 26, 2024. The next section you're going to look at is eligibility, making sure your organization is eligible to apply. In this case, the synopsis reads others, so you actually have to open the NOFO to read through eligibility, and that is usually happens when the eligibility list is fairly long or specific. So we will look at the NOFO to get clarification on this section. Also, if there's any additional information on eligibility, it would be here. The additional information is just more information about the agency and the program and any executive orders that are supported through this funding opportunity, in which this case, there's quite a few related to racial equity, since this is a Justice 40 covered program. I always look at the grant contact information. These are direct contact links for the folks who are providing technical assistance and eligibility questions on this grant opportunity. So definitely reach out. The more folks reach out, the more information will go out about this opportunity, including updated FAQs. So if you are reading through this and have questions, I suggest reaching out to those folks. Either under the package or related documents, you'll see the full announcement, which you will download from here. And you will need an Adobe installer to read through that NOFO package. So I'm going to open that up. So here we have the NOFO opened up. And as you can see, it's quite long. It's 57 pages. I would review the table of contents. You can go straight to eligibility if that's the first thing you need to know before going through 57 pages. But you can see how this is laid out. There is the funding opportunity description, award information, eligibility information, application and submission information, application review information, and award administration information. I think it's always great to start with the introduction and get a good sense of what they're looking for. As you can see, the EPA is looking for applications proposing community engagement research in underserved communities to advance the use of air pollution data and communication of air quality information for empowering local decisions. And then it breaks down how to approach these two things through methods and tools for data integration and effective communication to communities and decision makers. So if that sounds like what you're doing, it is worth to continue down through the NOFO. I would recommend reading the entire NOFO. If you establish that you're eligible and interested and working in this sector, there's a lot of information down deep in the details. For example, in this NOFO, minority serving institutions are estimated to receive 50% of the funding. And you wouldn't know that until you got down deeper into the NOFO. So we're going to scroll down into the next section about expected outputs and outcomes. This is really important for you to understand what the EPA is expecting this cooperative agreement to be able to produce through an award. So there's a lot of information in this NOFO around exactly what the deliverables will be. And so please do read this section of a NOFO first before you even dive into the other components that may or may not require a lot of attention. I want to skip down to application and submission information, which will help you decide what you will need to prepare in order to submit this application. Down there, you will see information about eligible applicants. So in this instance, public and private nonprofit institutions, public and private institutions of higher education, hospitals, state and local governments, and federally recognized tribes and U.S. territories are eligible to apply. Profit-making firms and individuals are not eligible to apply. So it's a pretty wide pool of applications that are being considered. There's also a section on how to submit. This does require a grants.gov submission, and there are requirements related to the way that it's submitted and what's included in the application package, including standard forms for federal grants, including grant pre-compliance review, and then it'll get into the components of the application that you will be preparing, including a project narrative, an abstract, a budget, a location, which again, if there are restrictions around regional priorities for this funding opportunity, it will be included in this section. It does have a description of a project summary, which I always encourage folks to start there, develop your project summary to even make sure that it's a good fit for what you're working on. In this case, you'll also see special components of the application that could differ from NOFO to NOFO. In this case, since you are dealing with data management, this proposal requires a research plan, a quality assurance statement, a human subjects research statement if you're doing any research on people, scientific data management plan, a community engagement plan, and references. And this NOFO will also describe what each of those sections require. So spend some time here, especially if you're not familiar with these things and you'll be developing them for the first time. They do describe detail, what to include within those plans and statements, including page links. Do pay attention to that. That is an absolute with federal grant applications. They are not messing around with their application format. These are, you can even see the way that it's describing here, how to number and space and font the pages. You don't want to be submitting in grants.gov on the day of and realize that you're over the page limit. They will not look at it. Anyway, the other section that I always ask folks to check out is any, let's go back to any information that is about the review process. You go back to the table of contents at the top and you'll see the section on application review information. which is really helpful to understand what the scoring criteria is that will be used to evaluate the strength of this proposal. In this section, they will talk about who's reviewing it. In this case, a peer review panel will be looking at it. It will share a criteria. Sometimes you will see an actual scoring criteria used for the application review process, and you'll see the points allocated for each section, which gives you a sense of how much time and attention to give each section and how they're weighed. In this NOFO, it doesn't have the scoring number. It does talk about what will be reviewed and how they're going to measure the merits of those sections. So they have a research merits section, they have a responsiveness criteria, they have a project management criteria. So what will be weighed will be the degree in which the applicant demonstrates that the key personnel have appropriate qualifications, that the proposal will be adequately managed using the objectives of the application, and that resources and cost controls are in place. This NOFO also has an environmental justice criteria, which is great, and they're looking for how this project benefits underserved communities. It also includes a community engagement plan, and it outlines clearly what to be included. This is a great reference point to the NOFO to determine out how you're going to section out and approach this application. So we do have a sample work plan for putting in an application like this, and we will be sharing that now. We recommend using a federal grant proposal checklist or work plan when figuring out your timeline for putting all these components to the application together. Let me just share my screen for that. This proposal work plan was developed by EPN and Annis and Associates for the EPA climate change grant. And so I've adapted it for this EPA air quality grant. And it really works back from the time of submission step by step in order to have clear delineation of who's completing what and the steps and the time it takes. So it really starts from step one, which is making sure that you are updated in grants.gov, that you have access to being able to submit an application. There are instructions within this work plan to do all these steps, and also being able to assign a staff lead an internal deadline. It also has recommendations of when you should start this. So this basic eligibility criteria, you should be thinking about months out. It can take up to a month or more to get a SAM.gov registration. We've also broken down reviewing EPA's processes and resources, including reading the entire NOFO, double checking the website for FAQs, registering for grant webinars, reviewing relevant documents, reviewing eligibility. I also recommend, if this is the first time you're applying for a federal grant and it's over 200,000, to do a self-administered administrative capacity form, which EPA uses for assessing the internal controls and fiscal capacity to manage a grant of an entity if they have not filled one out in 4 years for any federal award over 200,000. And this will be a good reference to see what systems you need to be in place, especially for your financial management of the award. Obviously, solidifying partners and envisioning the project is really key to the strength of your application. We have completed a sample roles and project description to help define what the roles are to put the application together and for managing its submission and estimated hours to do those things. So that's also linked here. And so you'll have access to that. So assigning grant writing and review roles, solidifying partners, being able to collectively brainstorm about your proposal, and divvying up sections will be really important at least 2 months out before submission. And then writing the application project narrative, which is really the place to start in order to populate the other sections of the application. So we have the abstract, the research plan, the quality assurance statement, the human subjects research statement, and the scientific management plan, and really making sure that there is a committed lead that has capacity to develop those things. And that may not be your senior grant writer, that could be someone on your team. It's really important to have the last review be someone really close to the project and also versed in grant writing. So they may actually be the last person to review the application. Budget justification, resumes, letters of intent, past performance history, community engagement plan, and assigning volunteer reviewers are all steps that we recommend that you take to make a strong proposal. You're going to want to spend time. I actually think it's probably going to take more than 2 weeks, but 2 weeks to have this completed before submission. All the application documents, some of this you might be familiar with, some of you won't. Federal agencies use some standard formatted forms when applying, including budget for non-construction programs, key contacts, pre-award compliance, project narrative, and indirect cost rate agreement. If you have that, if you don't, you are able to use the de minimis rate. And then when you're ready to apply or submit, you're going to want to make sure you do a final review to really make sure somebody who understands the NOFO requirements is reviewing for compliance. So not necessarily content, but just that the pages are numbered, that the font is correct, that you're not going over page number limits, like the little things that can cause a headache at the end. Having that last look, making sure that you're uploading everything into grants.gov and that the person who is an authorized organizational representative has the capacity and is scheduled to submit that grant on your behalf. So we hope this is a really helpful overview and sample work plan when putting a proposal together. We know it can be really daunting, and having these tools can make the process a lot easier. Thanks.